Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Cars and Coffee with me, Kenny Brown. And if you're a car guy or gal, then we've got a pretty good episode coming up. If you want to learn more about cars and performance, this is a good one because we're going to talk about building power on a 463 valve today, along with answering all your questions. We've got some questions from the Speed Therapy Society. And of course, you can remember you can always be sending questions in, and we get in the end, I'll try to answer as many as I can. So we're going to talk about the 463 valve today, a little bit about the Mustang Challenge and FR500S, which is one of the cars that we're working on right now. And then a little more on the Speed Therapy Academy, which is coming up. And I know you can come tune in Saturday mornings because you want to learn. If you really want to learn, Speed Therapy Academy is the place because later I'll go over all the things we go over. I mean, it's the people that have taken the first one really came away with a lot of good information, knowledge, and they can't wait to get back out and put all that knowledge to work. Let's see, we got questions. And Carrie's little reminders down here. She says she always has to remind me. I forget the little stuff. I never forget the technical stuff. I never forget the technical stuff because it's like impaired in my brain. So anyway, in her reminders, be sure to make sure you share what we're doing today because this is going to be kind of a cool episode. Share it with your friends and also start watch party. I'm sure you know how to do that, or there's this.
You just click a button up and it will say.
Yeah, just click a button. You can tell where my level of technology is like metal things that move. Let's see. Also subscribe to the newsletter. The newsletter is being changed for 2021. We're going to start adding some articles and do some more technical things and make it a little more interesting. Plus, any news will be in newsletter, of course. So be sure to subscribe to the newsletter. And if you're not a member of the Speed Therapy Society, please join because that's where all the questions come from that I answer in Cars and Coffee because I talk about what you want to learn about. Okay, and artwork this month, we're leaving Nicholas up there, okay? Nicholas Watt, one of my favorite artists. There. I figured that with a name like Nicholas and a bright red Ford GT40, that had a lot of Christmas spirit to it. So just imagine a bunch of presents stacked up on the back. Okay, running down my list. Let me do a couple of questions, answer a couple of questions. Brian wants to know how much rake you like to see in your race cars when setting them up. Okay, it's kind of a really broad question. Setting up a race car, setting up a street car are kind of two different things. But just kind of as roughly with live axle cars, I typically like to see a quarter to a half an inch rake to the back, meaning the back is up a little bit more. That just puts the wing up a little bit more if it's got one. And I always check the ride height. The way we check ride height, to keep it really simple, we just measure from the ground to the center of the wheel to fender lip because that's a constant. Anyway, we always like to keep a little bit of brake, but I only do it with in a race car with the driver or equivalent weight in the car and half a tank of fuel, so that we're kind of in the middle of the rear weight. And that's why I put a little more rake into the back because as the gas tank's full, it's going to come down and then it's going to work its way back up. So that's what we do on a race car. The street car, it's pretty simple. We do the same thing except we don't bother about having people in the car because the cars weigh so much. We just put like a little bit of rake to the back of live axles. Now IRS cars, with IRS cars, I like to run them pretty flat with no rake in them at all. Unless if there's a wing that's not real tall, then we might put the back up a little bit just to get a little more air to the wing. But that's kind of how we do that. And also with a little more rake in the back, if you got a wing, have to run rake with a wing and also stronger springs because it's going to push it down the straightaway. So that's that question. We had another question. We talked about last week about oil pump gears in modular motors. And the question came in, do you upgrade the oil pump gear for a 3-valve or a 4-valve engine that's road racing? Absolutely. In fact, street car, track car, race car, if you have the front cover off of your engine, doing chains or cams or anything, put a billet steel oil pump in. It's just insurance. If you're rebuilding the engine, absolutely put the steel oil pump in. I would show you when we've got one ordered right now, but it didn't turn up. Maybe in another episode, I'll show you what steel oil pumps look like. But absolutely use the steel oil pump always. Got a little frog in my throat today. I guess it's because the weather's kind of crappy. It's kind of one of those dismal, gray, chilly, damp mornings. You know, kind of really enjoy. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the FR500S Mustangs. In 2007, Ford Racing built a small fleet of Mustangs. They call them Miller cars for Miller Motorsports Park for their driving school. And they built those in 2007. And then in 2008, they built the FR500S, which was a little more advanced than the Miller cars because they were just school cars. And the FR500S was designed specifically for the Mustang Challenge series. The single mark series that you can only run the series if you had an FR500S, and they built, I think, something like 77 of them or in that range. I think it was supposed to be 75 initially, and then they ended up with a few more. But anyway, so they built the FR500S, and it was a race car. I mean, it wasn't like a full-blown super competitive race car, but it was a good, solid, let's call it an advanced track car. And if all the cars are the same, it doesn't matter because everybody's competing with the same thing. Anyway, that's what the FR500 was in the Mustang Challenge. I actually engineered 3 cars, 3 Mustangs for the Speedworks team in 2009, 2010 for the Mustang Challenge. And as luck would have it, we were talking with a potential customer, you know, this several months back about his car, his track car, and he was telling me all the problems he was having, and he really wanted to, you know, go through the car and make it better. And he sent some pictures in, and the first one I saw was a trailer, and the trailer door was open, and I said, "Hey, Kerry, that looks like a Speedworks car." And sure enough, I had a full picture. That was one of the Speedworks car, number 44 Speedworks car that I had engineered in the Mustang Challenge, which was really cool. So anyway, what we're doing is, I mean, it's a good car, but you know, the way Cliff described it to me, and after we got it here and you know did a sit down on it, I'm surprised you could even drive it because it was not set up well at all. So anyway, we're doing a complete overhaul of the car. In 2000, the Mustang Challenge ended in 2010, so there was no place for the Mustang Challenge cars to race. So Ford cut a deal with the SCCA, and they homologated them into the World Challenge, a GTS class. However, they were kind of like not enough car to compete. So Ford put through a series of upgrades. They did a top-end upgrade to get more horsepower, and they allowed my suspension, my AGS 4.0 suspension, to be legal. And so what we're doing with Cliff's car is we're, in the spirit of, you know, the integrity of the Ford Racing Mustang, we're setting it up to 2011 World Challenge specifications. With one addition, he's getting a new rear suspension, which we'll be talking about at some point. So it's going to be when it rolls out of here. I mean, it's not good. I'm surprised he could drive it as well as he did before, but when he gets it this time, it's going to blow his mind. He's not even going to recognize it's the same car when he drives it. It's going to be faster. It's going to stop. It's going to turn. It's going to feel great. So, but part of that is getting some power. Now, you've heard me talk about, you know, what I do to cars. I always build the performance or the power foundation first, which is chassis, suspension, wheels, tires, brakes. And that's my 5 secrets from the great cars that I build. And we never really add power until we've got a foundation underneath it. It's like building a house. You know, if you have no foundation and you add a second story, it's going to fall down. Well, if you add a lot of power to a Mustang without going through the foundation, you're going to have problems because the cars were specifically engineered by Ford for a specific horsepower range. And, you know, the brakes, the wheels, tires, the radiator cooling, everything was engineered around that specific power. You dump a whole bunch of extra power into that, you're going to overwhelm some system somewhere, whether it be the brakes, the suspension, get going fast, the suspension is going to let you down. So that's why we always build the power foundation first. In our track cars, we typically, for the most part, stay away from supercharging. Especially when we got to the Coyote cars in 2011, 2014. Boy, they made such great power. We didn't need anything else. So I like naturally aspirated for the track for a couple of reasons. Number one, it doesn't, adding a supercharger package to the front adds weight. Number one. Secondly, it adds complexity. The more things there are, the more things there are to go wrong. So, I mean, sure, they get fast, but in the same token, a Mustang, if you put like a positive displacement, like an Eaton style supercharger, you can't put the power down. I mean, you're just going to spin your wheels off the corner. So that's why we stick with naturally aspirated. And, time and time again, I've proven that I can get off the corner so much quicker than a GT500. I pass them down the straightaway because I'm carrying more speed. Remember, exit speed is everything on track. So anyway, we're putting an incredible power foundation underneath Cliff's car. Oh, he's also getting the Pro 4R, my Pro 4R race brakes, because he was complaining that he never really had a good pedal, never really was confident in the brakes. That's going to change. I think you've seen them before when I featured them. Our Pro 4R race brakes are amazing. They have all the features of like $8,500 a set race brakes, except they're lighter and the cost like half the price. So we're pretty happy with those. And if you got a dedicated track car, race car, you really need these Pro 4R front brakes. Okay, getting back to what we're going to talk about today, and that's power. We're going to add some power. We've got the foundation done, so now it's time to put power. Now, as I've talked about before, the bottom end of the motor, you don't make power at the bottom end, although you can lose power. If you have your bad rings or anything like that, you can lose power on the bottom end. The only time you can pick up increase in power with the bottom end is if you put a stroker kit in, add displacement, you'll increase torque. But real power is made at the top of the motor because the internal combustion engine is nothing more than an air pump. Air in, air out. Air in with gas, compress it, bang, air out. So the more air you can get in and out, the bigger bang you get and the more power you make. It's just that simple. So real power comes from the top end of the car. And we're going to talk about the upgrade kit that Ford Racing put out. And I'm specifically kind of following the Ford Racing, what they did, just to keep the integrity of the car. I mean, there's certainly some better components out there than the Ford Racing ones, but it's just a track car, and I want to make it, to add value. This is going to be a 2011 FR500S/WC for World Challenge. So, where do we start? Well, see, over my left shoulder, it looks like I got some turtles upside down back here. And we got a banner across the bottom.
That's the best I can do.
Okay, that's the best you can do. Even though it's better, you can see the turtles I got upside down. Those are some intake manifolds. We're going to talk about the intake manifold. Now, the key pieces to the power package that Ford approved and we're going to put on Cliff's car is intake manifold, throttle body, camshafts, and cylinder head. And that whole combination is, we haven't actually won the dyno. We think it's at least 70 horsepower, maybe a little bit more. So it's going to be a big boost to the car when it's done. And it's reliable. It's nothing that's going to be so on the edge it blows up. It's going to be rock solid reliable. So boy, where do we start? Well, let's start with intake manifolds. Now, last week we talked about the Daytona prototype engine and the FR500 intake manifold that we had in the long runner, short runner, that in the FR500 magnesium intake manifold that I have. We took out the butterflies so that we didn't use the long runners. Long runners are in there for torque. They make a long way around. They make torque, and for the top end, they'd open the butterfly, and it would use the short stack to make power at the top end. Well, all we did for the GT500 head intake was we blocked off the long runners, took out the butterflies, and we just run the short stack. Makes a lot of power at the top end. Now, the Daytona prototype engine that we had, we looked at, I didn't take it apart because it's too complicated, but we looked at the underneath and we could see that the runners were actually kind of mid-length. They weren't as short as the short runners in the 500 intake, and they weren't as long as the long runners in the 500 intakes. They're intermediate. I'm guessing the reason for that is an endurance car. I mean, they want the thing to run, day and night, so they didn't really tweak it to max, and also this combination of torque and power. So that's kind of, we talked about long runner, low end torque, short runner, high end power. So with that, let's take a look at our manifolds. Now this is a stock manifold right off the car. And we'll look at the bottom side, and you can see the charge motion centers right here. And what they do is, instead of running two different runners, they actually kind of close those off, and it makes more torque. And that's why they're in there. Of course, at top end, it's just something to get in the way. And you can see by the length that these runners go all the way around and they'll come all the way underneath. So it's a pretty long runner, which means it's going to make torque, but also they'll make some power on the top end. But it's mostly like torque and mid-range is what you see how this manifold was constructed. And with these little charge motion things that just get in the way. And that's what we took out of the 500 intake. Now this is nice. This is the Ford Racing high performance intake for 3 valves. And first of all, it's a lot lighter than the factory. But second of all, we start looking at the business end, and you can see there's no flappers, no charge motion, just a straight through. In fact, again, you can see where they kind of just, where the charge motion used to be, they just block that off. And you can see by the runners, they're kind of a mid-length runner. So they're going to make both power and torque. The runners are shorter than the factory, but not as short as like a straight stack. So it's going to make good power and torque, and it's a lot lighter. And this is a really nice piece. And you can see it doesn't look like the factory. It has a much bigger plenum up here on the top, which a lot of plenum gives you a lot of air in there, so they work better. So now getting air into the throttle body, or into the intake manifold, takes a throttle body. Now this is the factory throttle body. I think it's about 55 millimeters. And this is you can see that Ford Racing 62 millimeter throttle body. And like I say, I wanted to, there's bigger and better throttle bodies out there, but I want to stick with the Ford Racing one because they engineered it. I also talked about if you just put a throttle body on a car, you're not going to see that power increase. I mean, you might imagine it's more powerful, but the increase in power is just going to be minimal because that's only one piece of the puzzle. I mean, you can't add one piece of the puzzle and expect a huge result. It takes all the pieces of the puzzle to make good power. So all you do is add a bigger throttle body. The chances are you can actually lose a little torque and throttle response because when it opens up, there's like too much air. It can come through the throttle body, then the intake manifold or heads can handle. So, but for this is the one that Ford engineered, 62 millimeters. There's bigger throttle bodies out there. That I mean, I want to stick with that because I think that's sized just about right for the power we want to make. So that's the throttle body. Now another piece of it is the Ford hot rod camshafts, and you can see. Let's see a little bit. They're pretty lumpy. It's kind of round. I mean, this has a distinctive, boom, 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 kind of horsepower sounding. But they also, I mean, there's more lift and there's more duration. And again, we're getting back to an air pump. So if there's more lift in the cam and more duration, that means how long the valve is open, and you get more air in, and then more air out, and makes more bang. But here comes the sweetest part. Now, when I wanted to do this, coffee time, I talked about cars, now I'm having my coffee. Now, the real piece that makes this work are the cylinder heads. Now, at the time Ford offered an improved cylinder head as part of the package, is no longer available. So what I did is I called up our buddies at Livernois in Dearborn, and they do an amazing job of CNC cylinder heads. They've got for the 3-valve, they have a stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. But seeing this is a track car, we want to pick up power, but we want it to be reliable. You know, the stage 1 just wouldn't give us enough of what we're looking for. The stage 3 would be like too much for just a track car. So we set it on stage 2, which kind of makes sense. You know, not too big, not too small, right in the middle, just right. It's kind of like a Goldilocks head. So let me wheel this thing up here for you. Now let's start at this end. So this is a protectant. Peel this down, and you can see, try to get a light on there, that just how sweet this is. I mean, they've CNC'd the combustion chamber. They've surfaced the head. They're brand new valves, come with a package. And I think those are about as big an intake valve as you can get in these. So we're getting bigger valves, and we're sucking more air in, getting more air out. So I mean, this is if nothing else, this is almost pretty enough to use as a coffee table. Huh? Yeah, I said from Livernois.
Okay.
They do they do a great job. Now, check this out. Intake runners. It's hard to see, but you can just see how sweet the CNC job is. I mean, that is some really craftful work. That is really, really well done. And you can just see how nice the intake port is. They've taken a lot of material out, and they made it really want to suck a lot of air. Once it gets in, you got to push the air back out. So we'll spin this around to the exhaust side. And once again, just look at this. Look at those ports. I mean, have you ever seen anything nicer? That's why I talked to Dave at Livernois. I mean, I wanted a good head, and they do really nice work. I mean, it was pretty reasonable. Obviously we got all the CNC work done, new valves, new springs. I mean, this is if you've got a 3-valve and you want to make some extra grunt, send your heads off to Livernois. They do a great job. And, you know, the stage 2 is just perfect. Not too big, not too small. Unless you got a full-on race car, then you might want to go for stage 3. But, you know, for most applications, stage 2 is just right. Like I say, that they do such nice work. Move this over here. So that's kind of the top-end package. Get air in, get air out. Heads that flow a whole bunch more air, but to support the heads flowing more air, we've got an intake manifold that flows more air. We've got a camshaft that adds lift and duration, which flows more air. And we have a throttle body that flows more air. All that adds up to power. Now, on the exhaust side, we don't have to worry because the car already comes with long tube headers, so we're good there. So, I mean, at the end, then we're also going to change a different cold air kit that'll flow a little better than what the Ford one was. That's the only non-Ford part we're going to stick in, just simply because it's nicer to have something that flows better. So we're going to have I think a JLT probably intake or cold air kit, because they built something really nice and it'll flow a lot of air, because with all this modification, we need more air to come in, and I'd rather come through something that has designed for a little more airflow. So that's the only non-Ford part we're going to use. So that's what we got planned for Cliff's car, and we're pretty excited to get it going. We've got the engine, the short block is down at the engine shop. We've got the guy that does our engines has been doing our mod motors since the mid-90s. So he's done a lot of them. He's really talented, really, really good. In fact, he's one of the few people that's certified by Cosworth to rebuild Cosworth Formula One and IndyCar engines. And he's actually trained by Cosworth in the UK, so he knows what he's doing. We've actually got 3 motors lined up this winter for him. So, but that's the engine part.
Interesting. Hooker just called for you.
Gary said Tom, our engine guy, just called for me on my phone. Perfect timing.
Yeah, I know. I know. We should have him on as a guest sometime.
Yeah, we could do that.
See if anybody would like that.
See if anybody would like to have Tom on, our engine guy, sometime. So, okay, I've kind of got through all the cool stuff. So maybe now we could talk a little bit more about the academy. And like I say, I mean, you come in Saturday mornings to learn, and you learn a lot. But in reality, there's not the time to go into depth on a lot of these subjects, which is why we did the academy. People wanted to learn more and more. So we did the academy so I can really go into depth on a specific subject. We'll spend an evening or 2 evenings or even 3 evenings on just something. And it's like, is it okay for me? Will I get anything out of it? Well, let's take a look. I mean, how much do you know about chassis building, types of chassis, function of chassis, structural chassis? What about suspensions, suspension geometry? How much do you know about that? Now that was over 2 weeks, and we actually had to pack it in, so it might go to 3 weeks next time. Go through shocks and springs. Now, how much do you know about the inner workings of shocks, the different spring rates, how to apply the spring rates to a different application, and then selecting the right shocks for your application. Then we had brake tech. Now that was a big one too. I mean, we really get into brake tech. We go through all kinds of things: calipers, rotors, seasoning, upgrading, pad compounds, bedding, fluid. Like I say, what I talk on briefly on Saturday mornings, we go into great depths. Brake cooling and wheels and tires. We actually had Steve Shard from Forge Line Wheels come on as our expert in masterclass, talking about wheels, which was really informative. And we go through the whole different kinds of wheels, what you need to be looking for on wheels, and talk about tires, different types of tires for different applications. Then there's like hardware and plumbing, cooling, plumbing, hardware. And we also had somebody come in to do a master class on hardware and plumbing, engine and drive line. Pretty much go through like what I just talked about this morning, except we'll talk about the whole engine package and everything in the drive line, how that all works, how you can make it work better for you. Aerodynamics, that was a real favorite. We actually ended up doing 2 weeks on aerodynamics, and I go through a whole bunch of CFD, which is computational fluid dynamics, and how that has really impacted the aerodynamic improvements on race cars over the last, I'll say 15, 20 years. And then we'll go through holding the safety. We had Ben from Impact come on as a master class and talk about safety. And every time we have one of these master class guys come on, I learn something. So I mean, it's like if I learn something, then obviously all my guys are learning something. Then we get into vehicle preparation and car setup. I just talked about ride height. Well, we go a little deeper into the ride height and how that affects things. Alignments. We get into track tuning. It's like 2 weeks on track tuning. And we go through a whole bunch of scenarios. If it oversteers here, what could cause it? If it understeers here, what could cause it? It's understeer at the turn in, understeer at the middle, or understeer at the end, and vice versa. We go through a whole bunch. That's a pretty complex thing. We actually go down what I used in the 70s to kind of when I was learning about all this. I got a chart that goes down to all the different things and possibilities for troubleshooting. And we go through that. And then we get into track tuning. And then putting it all together, we talk about driving technique. All through this, though, there's coaching. There's driver coaching. Anybody can sign up for what we call the hot seat, not hot seat, driver seat, where they'll come to the driver's seat and they'll come with a specific car problem or questions, and we'll talk that through. Everybody can hear that. Also, the cool thing about the Academy is not like this. It's not like Facebook Live. It's Zoom, which means that, it's when I do the Academy, it's like I got the Brady Bunch. Everybody's on the screen. Everybody can talk. We can interact. It's pretty cool. You can ask questions. But that's what's a lot for our master class guys that come in. Everybody had lots of questions for them, so that makes it really easy. And then we do the driver coaching at the end. We have people send in their videos of on-track driving, and we kind of went through that and talked through. And some of the guys can't wait to get back out and apply what we talked about because they think they're going to be a much better driver. So, I mean, is it for you? It just depends on how much you want to learn. I mean, if you really want to learn this stuff, this is the place to do it. I mean, I keep telling people that probably the worst places to get information about your car is the internet, the paddock, or the know-it-all guy down the street, because none of those people really do this for a living, which means their level of knowledge is like this big, and they're going to tell you only what they know, but they don't know what they don't know. So, I mean, if you want to be the guy that knows and don't have to ask the guy next door to get wrong information, you can do it all yourself. You know, you can show up at the track and look like a pro, getting your car ready, getting it set up, or if it's a street car. I mean, you can be kind of like the envy of all your guys' street cars. You got to know how to build your car, how to set up your car, how to make it work. So, I mean, there's a lot of value there in the speed. Oh, you also get this nifty shirt and a notebook. I forgot to bring the notebook up. And the reason that the notebook has dividers in it, because every one of the immersion sessions, there's a PowerPoint. And that PowerPoint lives in the resource section of the Academy, and it's available for download. So people can download the PowerPoint from each week and 3-hole punch it, stick it in their notebook. The only one that is not available for download is the section on suspension geometry, because I talk about things that I really don't want a lot of people to know. There's nobody else, and if you look around the industry, try to ask anybody else about suspension geometry, and you're going to get a whole bunch of different answers. And that's the thing. That's why we're not allowing people to download that particular thing, because there's information in there that is, that's, oh, my cars work so good. I've been working on suspension geometry for years. The thing about, most of the aftermarket companies, there's a lot of torque arms out there for rear suspension. And the way I look at torque arms is, I mean, they're good for straight line. I mean, they're really good for straight line acceleration, but they have real weaknesses under braking. And you got a geometry that's not really the best when you look at it. And with the 3-link, I can put the instant center where I want, put the roll center where I want. I mean, I can really take a 3-link and make it work. And I think if people that just throw a torque arm on there don't understand rear suspension geometry, or they do something different. But it's quick and easy, and everybody does it except me. So, I mean, the Academy's a pretty cool thing. And something else that's I just found out about is that we've had some people say this time of year is kind of tough with the wife, with all the Christmas stuff. And so we have arranged on our website, we have a company that does financing for us for parts, that you can finance parts, make it easier, make it a little easier. In fact, it's kind of cool, but the first 6 months there's no interest. So anyway, we've got it set up so we can put the Academy on there. So if the time of year is kind of tough with Christmas holidays and everything going out, then certainly we can set you up with some finance and payment plans.
As low as $150 a month.
Yeah, as low as $150 a month. So, as you said. Anyway, that's kind of about the Academy. Have we got any questions coming in today?
Yeah, we have a few. Are you ready for questions?
Sure.
Okay, ask everybody to ask some questions.
Okay, if you got questions, send them in now. Oh, don't forget, you didn't remind me. I'm going to remind myself. Thumbs up. We need a lot of thumbs up, and on Facebook, a lot of hearts. That helps spread the word. And of course, be more happy to share this with your friends, because I think there's a lot of people that can get some value out of this. And we've got questions coming up. Drum roll.
Okay, so skip around a little bit here.
Where'd my water go?
I had to move it. You have too much up here. There we
I'll
go.
move the other side.
Okay. So, oh, Cliff Glenn said, Kenny knows this stuff. I learned enough that I realized that I wanted to know even more. The academy was pretty cool, and the people in the class turned out to be darn awesome too. Made great friends all over the country and from Bulgaria. So, Chris asks, let's see, Jeff Jacobucci, I believe, let's see, everything's skipping around a little bit. Sounds like he has a short wheelbase Thunderbird.
Ooh.
Yeah, send pictures of that.
Yeah, send some pictures in.
Chris Melatu said, do you dyno engines after the setting them up?
Yeah, it depends on what we do to them. Some of the basic stuff we really wouldn't, but when we're doing a full engine like this, we will. We don't do it dyno ourselves. We have to sub that out to somebody else. My old shop on Gasoline Alley, we had a really cool dyno, but we're not there yet after we're rebuilding the program. But yeah, on some we do. Basic stuff like cold air and exhaust. We really don't need to spend the time on dyno because we can plug in a tune that's already there. I think we had Tony the Tuner was one of our masterclass guys in the academy. We also did a little spot on Cars and Coffee. He's been tuning Mustangs like forever. He's got thousands and thousands of tunes in his library, so to speak. And I mean, he's so good that he actually teaches for the 3 major tuner companies. He actually goes out and teaches. So a lot of times, all we have to do is call Tony up, give him the specifications, and boom, he just emails off a tune ready to go, which saves a lot of money. I mean, and dynoing cars is not real cheap. So for little jobs we wouldn't. For big jobs we would. Okay.
Okay, so anyway, I'm not sure if this is a question or what it is, but it's from Billy Ray Bentley Jr. Why is the GT, I think it's why it is, it says why the GT350 was so awesome on the road course.
Why the GT350 was so awesome on the road course.
Yeah, I don't know if that was earlier in the show.
GT.
It's GT350. If you're still there, Billy, just why don't you clarify what you're asking?
Yeah, because like the current GT350s, 550 cars are, I mean, they're okay on track, but as we've talked about before, there's some things that can be improved. I mean, Ford can't build a true track car. They have to build a car that OE that their bosses and their bosses and their bosses have to sign off on the car. It's pretty darn good, pretty darn good street car, and it's a good track car. But if you want to be super serious, there's some shortcomings. But we talk about that and how you can actually make them better, because we've done like our GT4 Mustangs that we built. We've had a couple of those just blow past GT350s on track, because we're carrying so much more cornering speed, so much more exit speed. Remember, exit speed is the prime thing. So.
Okay, and Colby Ward says, will you also use cam phaser lockouts / limiters on Cliff's car?
I have to look and see. They are required on some camshafts and not on others. We haven't got to that point. We just got the cams in. I need to look and see. I don't think these get phasers because they're a Ford product. I know the comp cams, you have to use the lockouts or phasers on those. So I think it all depends on the camshaft, and that the cam manufacturer will say what it needs.
Okay, and it looks like some people were looking for Livernois Motorsports, so we have a link in there. It's just livernoirmotorsports.com, and just let them know Kenny sent you.
They're really, really accomplished people. I trust them, and you saw the kind of work that they do. They also do 4-valve heads, and I don't know. They might even do 2-valve heads. I'm not sure. We just work pretty much on 3 valves and 4 valves these days. So, but they got some really, really great 4-valve heads. If I was going to do a 4.6 4-valve, I'd get 03, 04 heads, send them to Livernois, have them sweeten them up. That would make a great car.
Okay, and we're having lots of comments on, yes, bring on the engine guy, bring on Tom Hooker. So, okay, and then we also have, are you using different filter and air inlet on Cliff's car?
Yeah, we're using different, I mean, the FR500 that came with, it's not really a cold air kit. It's just a big, like, huge cone filter. It has more or less like a factory snorkel in. So we're going to JLT, which has a much nicer radius, better flow, and a bigger air filter. So yeah, we're gonna improve pretty much the same air filter size. The improvement's going to be in from the air filter to the throttle body, and that should flow a lot more air.
And Ernie Abercrombie is on. Hi,
Hello,
Ernie. We haven't seen you for a while. He does KB cell motor mounts.
Yeah, well, for what motor mounts for our?
He has a S197.
Yeah, in fact, we keep developing the motor mounts because we've got a lot of people. There are more people on track than we ever thought of. So they've actually come out with like 2 sets of motor mounts. One is for street driving, and one is for track and race. So we've kind of we keep trying to improve because our original motor mounts we went pretty much for NVH as an isolator. We don't use urethane. We use actually vibration material like for machines, and the original was great for NVH. That's noise, vibration, and harshness. But the guys on track were tearing them up. So we keep developing. I think we're pretty good package now for the track guys. And we've made that sort of the same improvements for the street guys. We keep going up in density on the vibration. I don't like going solid mount for the simple reason I've had, on 4.6 engines they're a long time ago. I'm sure the newer ones are better. Anytime we solid mount a motor, we crack the block. So the only way to solid mount a motor is to put engine plate across the front and the back. Otherwise, I like something in there to absorb some of the vibration. And so that's why we use like the vibration things they put under heavy machines.
And Ernie says he's here every week, so I must just not see his name all the time. Hi, Ernie. Good to see you. We'll look for your name in the future ones. Let's see. We also have a couple more questions. Chris Melatu. You're going to be talking to him after this.
Yeah, actually, Chris has a consult lined up this afternoon.
Yeah. So what kind? Chris is asking 2 questions. First of all, he asked what time and dates, what time and days of the week is the Academy on?
Okay, it's been on Tuesday evenings at 7 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And like the master class or group coaching is on Thursday evening. But every one of them is recorded, and they're available in the resource center.
So if you miss 1 or 2.
So if you miss 1 or 2, you really don't miss 1 or 2 because you can go back and look at it any time. Also, you have access to that resource center for at least 6 months after the academy. So you can go back and look at each one of those as many times as you want.
Okay, and then Chris says Kenny knows his geometry. He must have a good math teacher.
Actually, in high school, I was like at best a C- in geometry because it didn't make it. I couldn't apply it to anything, so it was just like circles and triangles but when I started doing suspension geometry, all of a sudden, all that stuff started making sense. And I've been a student of suspension geometry since the late 70s, I'd say.
Yeah, you've been doing that for a long time. Okay, also, Steve Smith, do you recommend dry or oiled air filters?
It kind of depends on the air filter itself. Like most of the cone filters, I think oil treated is always, to me, a little better because, oil attracts dust. Dry filters, different air filters are made differently and have different requirements. Some are engineered specifically to be dry. Some are engineered to have just a light film of oil. I kind of like the oil ones because, it's like oil attracts dust. Just like if you have Well, we talked about rod ends. You know, we never lubricate rod ends. If you were to lubricate a rod end, you go back and look at it, and it'll be coated with dust, and that dust will turn into sandpaper. So yeah, the oil ones I think would be, especially if you're in a climate that has a lot of dust.
Okay, we have a number of other questions here. If you have more questions, you can ask. We have 10 minutes.
Yeah, we're good on questions.
We're good on questions. Can you, Paul? I'm not going to pronounce your last name because I'll just butcher it, Paul. But it's an interesting last name. Can you explain intake short versus long runners and why long works better for torque?
Yeah, it's all kind of about velocity. I mean, it's interesting. The shorter the runner, the higher RPM the car is running. If you look at like some race cars, they've got tiny little runners because they got good velocity down there. If you know, the longer runners, it's all about, you know, you're building velocity through the whole thing, which builds torque. Just the longer, the more torque; the shorter, the more speed.
Okay, and Chris Militu wants to know what kind of coffee you drink. I think that could be a preview to what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I pretty much, you know, I like serious coffee. My decaf is espresso decaf, and regular coffee is either espresso or French roast. So I kind of like, you know, coffee that's got some coffee to it.
Years ago, he went to a special coffee shop, and they made a special blend for him.
Yeah.
It was, what was it called? Ken's
Blend
on the shelf, and people loved it. So just think about that and cars and coffee, and
yeah, we'll see. That's a subject that's open for discussion.
Okay, and we have some more. I need to move all the way down here. So Jeff Jocobucci said that he was in reference to naturally aspirated GT350, but he does own the #1 T-Bird. So yeah, that's cool.
Okay, short wheelbase T-Birds. Let me diverse on that. A long time ago, I was working with Ford a lot, and I was really close with the guys in the X Garage. And the X Garage is where they do all the pre-production stuff. They work on the cars. You know, they do the prototypes. They do all the stuff in there. And a good friend of mine got the crazy idea. At that time, the group I was with was Mustang, Thunderbird, and Mark 8. All three of those cars were under the same group. And they took and they built like a really super short wheelbase Thunderbird as a test mule. And they couldn't get management to sign off on it. But I thought that was kind of a cool idea. So we actually went back and we built a series of short wheelbase T-Birds. I think one was featured in Car and Driver, was it? Mm-hmm. But I mean, yeah, we shortened up the I think we took 9 inches out, and it made the car's handle so much better. You know, as one of the engineers at Ford told me, when you shorten the wheelbase up on that, you improve the polar moment of inertia at the back.
Okay, here's another question.
So yeah, send us some pictures. I'd like to see that.
This is from Eric. What would you say are the most important upgrades to a S550 suspension for autocross?
Springs and shocks. Springs and shocks, wheels and tires. I mean, that's you've got to get some spring in the car, but not too much. You wouldn't put as much spring for an autocross car as you would for a track car, but you've got to control roll. I'm sure if you're going around the course, you can feel that car roll front and back. If you can take some of that roll out, then you're not going to roll the tire so much. You're going to get a better footprint. Remember, we talked about the Mustang. McPherson does a positive roll front suspension. The more the car rolls, the more the outside tire goes positive, which puts the wear on the outside of the tire, and you're not putting a full contact back down. So controlling roll is something. It's like we've set up a couple of cars, not 550s yet, for 197s. We put some special spring packages together for some autocross cars, and they do really well. So I would say springs and shocks, front sway bar possibly. I would not do a rear sway bar. We found in early testing of the 550 platform that we had, anytime I use an adjustable rear sway bar, I ended up setting it at full soft. Otherwise, the cars would get too loose. So I thought, if I'm setting these sway bars up at full soft, why would we even put them on? So we had a front sway bar, but not a rear sway bar. Also, I think there's some improvement to be made in locking down the rear IRS carrier. We've got a kit that we use that works pretty good. It's pretty easy to install. That helps from IRS carrier moving around, and it helps the wheel hop. So those are just a couple of things.
And we have another question from Anubis. Ford Racing Performance Parts 62 millimeter throttle body. Would a tune be required? It sounds like he has a naturally aspirated 4.6 liter engine with Cook's long tubes, full exhaust system. It's not a big horsepower gain, minimal at best, but I have heard it gives a better throttle response.
What year car is this?
It's a 4.6 liter. I think he has like a 10 and up, 10 to 14.
Here's what I would recommend for throttle response. Going to a bigger throttle body, 10 and up, that'd be a 550 car. I mean,
no, S197.
Coyote car.
Yeah.
I would. You want throttle response? You need a pedal max. I mean, pedal max. We put pedal maxes on every single car that we do. So what is pedal max? Pedal max is this little gizmo that plugs in. You've got on these cars, you've got electronic throttle control. There's no wires or anything. It's all done electronically. This little gizmo plugs in between the gas pedal and the loom that goes to the computer. And what it does, it speeds up the signal from your right foot to the computer to your throttle. And it's pretty amazing. It comes with a little dial that you can go from 0 to 100. And at 100%, I mean, you hit that throttle, it jumps. I mean, it literally jumps. In fact, it's so responsive that when I'm in a parking lot, I have to turn my car all the way down to 0 because just hit the gas a little bit and the car will leap. Also in snow and rain, I turn it all the way down. Typically, I run my cars about 70% of the throttle max or pedal max. And we did one of the episodes. I actually had some charts that showed the difference in pedal response, and because of that, it does pick up some horsepower and torque. So you put a pedal max in, it's going to blow you away. The kind of throttle response you get. You get far more throttle response from pedal max than you would a throttle body.
Okay, there's some more conversation going on about Jeff's short wheelbase Kenny Brown T-Bird. So that's pretty interesting. 80, somebody was asking the years, 89 to 90s. He also has a short wheelbase Lincoln Mark 8.
Oh, so I wonder if Doug did that.
Yeah, I'm sure Doug did it.
Yeah, Doug probably did that. That was the guy that did our short wheelbase cars.
Okay, and then we have, hopefully I'm not missing anybody here. Here's one right here. Chuck Foley. Oh, he's just saying, howdy from Oklahoma. The Oklahoma Mustang Club is the host for the MCA Grand National Show September 2021. Cool.
Well, there we go.
Yeah. Let us know that, Chuck. Pop in every so often. We'll make that announcement.
Yeah, we'll promote it for you.
Yeah. And what type of exhaust upgrades are you making on Cliff's car, if any?
None really, because they come with full length headers, so we don't need to do that. I would like to change the mufflers because he's got kind of not a flow through muffler, but the problem is, in fact, when the car came in, he had the exhaust pipes came out in 2 little tips that turned one way. And the reason for that is to keep under the noise regulation at Laguna, because I guess they're pretty strict about that. So really, unless I can come up with a quiet, straight through muffler, I don't think I'm going to make any changes. It's got nice headers. It's got X pipe. So the exhaust is already there. Okay,
so here is Kyle Wagner's asking a question. I'm going to start out at the end. He's building a mild, naturally aspirated 4.6 with comp cam stage 2 with stiffer springs. So here's this question. He's a little late to the party, so you may have answered this question already. I've heard that to get high-end horsepower in those engines, you need to apply a larger throttle body and port the heads, but that tends to take away from the lower RPM. Is this true? And is there any recommendations to keep low-end torque while also increasing high-end RPM and power?
What kind of 4-valve is it?
It doesn't say, it just says 4.6.
Oh, 4.6?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a Cobra.
Okay.
Yeah, the thing is, there's not a lot of intake manifolds available for the 4.6 4-valves. I've got a magnesium FR500 where it works really good. I've seen some others out there that kind of get expensive. But, I mean, porting the heads, it's just going to make more of everything. Getting a nice set of CNC ported heads makes a big difference. And with the intake manifold they have.
Kyle's was a 2008.
2008?
Yeah, I think that's, that's his question. It's 2008.
A 2008 would be a 3-valve.
I said it was a 4.6. It's 4.6 3-valve.
Okay, 4.6 3-valve.
Yeah.
So now that I know that, what's the question again?
Okay, let's see. It's too bad we can't talk, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
this is the Academy. We would be talking back and forth.
Yeah. I've heard that to get high-end horsepower in these engines, you need to apply a larger throttle body and port the heads, but that tends to take away from the lower RPM. Is this true? And is there any recommendation to keep low-end torque while also increasing high-end RPM and power?
Well, at the very beginning, we went through the whole upper part for a 4.6 3-valve in making power. I've got a set of Livernois ported cylinder heads, CNC ported, which is what the thing that makes it all work. And then we have the hot rod cam and the 62 millimeter throttle body, and then the intake now, the Ford Racing intake manifold. And the amount of low end torque that you're going to lose is going to be pretty negligible, because what you're going to gain is a lot in the mid range and a lot at the top end. So that if you've got a stick car, actually low end torque is not that as important as mid range torque and upper end power. So that's the combination we're using on Cliff's car: the Livernois Stage 2 CNC ported heads, the 62 millimeter throttle body from Ford Racing, the hot rod cams from Ford Racing, and the intake manifold, high performance intake manifold from Ford Racing. If you wanted to make power but didn't really are focused on low end torque, then leave the stock cams in and do everything else we just did. It's still going to make more power, not as much at the top end, but it's going to make more power at the low end, more torque at the low end.
Okay, I think that is it for the questions. If anybody has anything else, put it up very quickly or we'll have to wait. One thing that I noticed that we probably should have done is shown pictures of Cliff's car. Even though we're just talking about his engine, it would have been nice. So we'll be talking about Cliff's car closer to the time it's completed. So we'll throw some pictures up at that point. We're kind of limited because we're on this little Facebook camera here. So
yeah,
our camera. So it's very limited right now.
So yeah, the last question for the 3-valve, 4.6 3-valve. Go into this episode is going to be posted on YouTube, Kenny Brown TV, YouTube Kenny Brown TV, and go in and watch the first part of the episode because I go through the whole thing and show the heads and everything. And if you want more information, just set up a 15-minute consult with me, and we can talk through. Or I can set you up with the guys I know at Livernois.
Okay, and I think that is it. We need to talk about the next couple weeks.
Okay, next couple weeks. Here's a couple of things. With the holidays coming up, we decided to do encore presentations of next weekend. Will be encore presentation of last week. We'll talk about the engine on the Daytona prototypes, and the following week it's going to be encore presentation of this week because there are a lot of people interested in the engine stuff. Also, we've had some chatter or some bantering about if people would like to see it's on like Christmas and New Year's, running like a marathon, Cars and Coffee.
Yeah.
If you think that'd be cool or interested, send me a note.
Yeah, just give us a thumbs up or yes.
Give us a thumbs up or yes, or send a note into the Academy or even in Facebook. Because we had somebody say that, why don't you do a whole day of encore presentation, do a marathon? They do it for everything else. Why don't see why we couldn't do it?
Okay, and then we also have a couple more things here. See, Colby, okay, so we got some conversation on the secret suspension piece. That's Colby Ward's asking about that, and Steve Foley responded back. It's very close.
Yeah, it's close. We've got a little bit of delay. I was planning on, now the Speed Therapy Academy guys have already seen this. It's something that we applied for a patent for, so it's patent pending. It just changes the car completely. I was planning on showing it like sometime in this month it'll go from Speed Therapy Academy saw it first.
And they actually got to purchase.
Yeah, they actually got to purchase some of the first batch. The next preview is going to be Speed Therapy Society, and then it won't be introduced to the general public till quite a bit after that.
So Speed Therapy Society, if you're new to us, is our Facebook group. It's a private Facebook group. So just Google or search Kenny Brown Speed Therapy Society on Facebook and then join. So you can get in.
And the what I wanted to do is I wanted to get in the first production run before I introduced it to the society people, and it got a little bit delayed because what we found out is there's like a frame that kind of sits up in the car, and because we're using existing hard points to mount this, we had 4 different cars, and the frame we had would not fit any 2 cars the same. So we've been working to try to get the best compromise to fit most cars.
This much.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking like 1/16 of an inch for the bolts won't go through. It just tells you, what the top factory tolerance is on these cars. So anyway, that kind of like slowed us up a little bit. We're pretty happy with what we have. We think on some cars we still might need to take a file a little bit because like I said, we had 4 cars and it didn't fit any 2 of them the same. But right now we've got one that fits 3 for sure. Mm-hmm. The 4th, we haven't tried the 4th car, which is Steve's car actually.
Yep, Steve Foley.
Steve is the 4th car that we want to try to fit in it. But we actually, when his car was here before, you didn't know this, we test fitted the carrier on the frame on his car. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said we had 4 different cars and it didn't fit. But what we have now fits 3 cars, and when Steve brings his back, we'll see that. But like I say, we're talking 1/16, 1/8 of an inch off in the holes to keep the bolts from going through. So I mean, it's really hard to make things for everything because, like I say, we're using 4 existing hard points on the car to mount, which means all 4 of those have to be exactly the same for all the cars, and we're finding out they're not. So probably in January, let's hope for mid-January, I think. We can introduce it to Speed Therapy Society people.
Okay, and so we have 3 cars in the shop right now that are getting it. Let's see, Steve Foley, well, his car's not here, but it will be coming in. Chris Militu and Cliff Glidden.
All getting the new, and the new suspension is going to be AGS 4.5. Okay, 4.0 is S197 suspension, 5 to 3.14. The next generation is AGS 4.5, which is kind of like what we did for in the 3.0, which for the SN95 cars. When we did the IRS cars and did the whole geometry thing at the back of the IRS cars, that became AGS 3.5. So it only makes sense that this is going to be AGS 4.5.
Okay, and just one more. Please say yes if you'd like a marathon ran over the Christmas holiday weekend and then again on the New Year's holiday weekend, or which one you'd like better. So if you'd quick respond to that, yes or no. We're not going to send any notifications that it's on though. So we'll advertise it, and then it'll be on your own to tune in and watch it. So I think that's it.
Cool.
It's happy holidays, I guess.
Yeah, we're out of questions. Yeah. So with that, I would like to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year's, happy not working. And I'm sure this is going to be a pretty small Christmas for everybody based on what's going on. I know we're staying home. We're going to have a Christmas all by ourselves.
Yeah. We made it this far. We're not going to.
Yeah, we made it this far. We're being pretty cautious, and I'm actually making a special dinner for Christmas Day.
Tell them what you're making.
Beef Wellington, Brussels sprouts,
braised
braised Brussels sprouts, and partially new potatoes.
And I'm making
and a nice red wine.
I'm making cheesecake.
And Carrie's making cheesecake.
So it's a non-Christmas meal, I guess.
Yeah. So, well, it's our Christmas meal.
Yeah. So.
But when we have two, it's like, who wants to buy a big turkey for just two people?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's going to be our Christmas. So I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and stay safe. That's all I can say. And we're almost through this thing. We're getting really close. I heard the next vaccine has been approved. So things should be rocking in the new year. 21 has to be better than 20. I mean, 20 has been a pretty disappointing year. Anyway, that's it for today. Enjoy the holidays. Bunker presentation next Saturday, the following Saturday, and then I'll be back in January. Want for information on the Speed Therapy Academy, get a hold of Carrie. She's the one that knows the most about it because it's her project. You can call in, send her an email.
Or go on the kennybrown.com website, and there's information on there.
Yeah, so there you go. Okay, I'll see you guys in the new year, and it's going to be a better year.